Hello, I'm James Izimoha and you're watching AnewZ. Let's see your headlines. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a new military plan to take control of Gaza City. Russian airborne attack targets northwestern Kyiv, killing 3 people. President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev meets U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in the U.S. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a new military plan to take control of Gaza City amid growing pressure over the war and its humanitarian impact. The move follows Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments about plans to expand operations across the Gaza Strip.
Israel is set to take control of Gaza City after its security cabinet approved a new plan in the early hours of Friday, a significant escalation in its nearly 2-year war with Hamas. The move comes just hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel intended to take full military control of the Strip, but not govern it.
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel.
Israeli troops will prepare for a new ground offensive in Gaza's north, while issuing evacuation warnings to civilians to move. Netanyahu's office says aid will be provided to those outside combat zones, but aid groups warn conditions are already catastrophic and options for safe displacement are few. A full takeover would reverse Ariel Sharon's 2005 withdrawal of the territory and signal a dramatic new phase of the war.
Netanyahu's decision to occupy Gaza, it's like there's nothing left to occupy in the first place. We're already dying, 100,000 deaths every day. Around 100 to 150 people die daily from starvation, on top of everything else we're going through. Practically, all of Gaza has been squeezed into the western part of Gaza City, and that's all that's left.
Meanwhile, humanitarian agencies warn that Gaza is on the brink of starvation. According to the United Nations Human Rights Agency, 500,000 people are facing famine. But with 75% of the territory now under Israeli control and Hamas clinging to fragmented pockets, the battle for the Strip is no longer just about military control. It's about preventing human suffering.
Tensions flared in Israel as thousands took to the streets on Thursday, demanding the release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. In Tel Aviv, protests turned violent, with police using water cannons to break up the crowds.
In Tel Aviv, Israeli police and demonstrators clashed as officers tried to disperse crowds using water cannons on Thursday. Protesters lit flares, chanted slogans, and held banners bearing the faces of those still in captivity. Demonstrators also gathered outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party headquarters, urging him to prioritize negotiations. Thousands of people rallied nationwide in Israel, including Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa and the Negev, demanding the immediate release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza and an end to the war. In Jerusalem, families of hostages staged a protest outside government headquarters, coinciding with a ministerial meeting on Netanyahu's plan for the full takeover of Gaza City. The protests come amid mounting public pressure on the government to strike a deal with Hamas. According to Israeli officials, 50 hostages remain in Gaza, with 20 believed to be alive. The Gaza war erupted on the 7th of October in 2023, when Hamas killed 1,200 people and took 251 hostages in a cross-border attack, according to Israeli figures. Since then, Israel's offensive has killed more than 60,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza health authorities.
Torrential rain has brought southern Japan's Kyushu region to a standstill. triggering floods, landslides and mass evacuations. Authorities have issued their highest level warnings in the region as rescue efforts continue and thousands seek shelter.
Japan's meteorological agency has issued a special alert for heavy rain in Kagoshima Prefecture on the southern island of Kyushu, the highest on its 5-tier scale warning of life-threatening hazards, including landslides and river flooding. In Kirishima City, more than 500 millimeters of rain fell in just 24 hours. Authorities have issued evacuation advisories for more than 360,000 residents in Kagoshima and neighbouring Miyazaki Prefecture to seek safer areas. A mudslide in Ara City damaged homes and buried 2 people who were rescued and taken to hospital. Rescuers are still searching for a woman in her 30s who remains missing. Floodwaters have inundated streets and shopping areas, with muddy torrents spilling over riverbanks. Transportation has been severely disrupted, with trains and buses suspended and dozens of flights cancelled. The Fire and Disaster Management Agency reports that multiple rivers, including the Amurigawa and Tegogawa, have exceeded critical flood levels. Local media say several bridges have collapsed and road damage is widespread, though the full extent is still being assessed. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has set up an emergency task force, pledging that the government will do everything possible to protect lives and safety. Meteorologists say the extreme rainfall is linked to a linear precipitation zone, repeatedly passing over the region, with dangerous conditions expected to continue.
Today, Shenzhen stands as one of China's major hubs for finance, technology and global trade. As a key point along the Middle Corridor, it plays an increasingly important role in connecting China with Central Asia, the South Caucasus and Europe. And Anastasia Lavrenia brings us the special report.
Hello, welcome to Shenzhen, a city that in just 40 years has transformed from a small fishing village into a major financial and technology center. Today it stands as a symbol of China's economic progress and plays one of the key roles in the Middle Corridor, the new generation Eurasian trade route connecting China to Central Asia, South Caucasus to Europe. Shenzhen is leading in innovation. It's also home to the headquarters of some of China's most influential companies, including Huawei, a global leader in telecommunications and digital solutions. Also for BYD, a pioneer in electric mobility and renewable energy technologies. In the lead up to COP29 held in Azerbaijan last year, BYD delivered a fleet of electric buses to support sustainable urban transport in Baku, further strengthening the technological and environmental ties between the two countries, between China and Azerbaijan. Nearby is Yantian Port, one of the busiest container ports in the world. In 2024, it handled over 15 million shipping containers, that is standard size used worldwide to measure cargo. Many of these containers travel along the Middle Corridor, highlighting Shenzhen's strategic role in connecting China to Europe and Asia. Trade along the Middle Corridor is growing rapidly. In 2024, over 4 million tons of goods were transformed along the route, a significant increase from previous years. This growth is supported by infrastructure developments in countries like Azerbaijan, which is enhancing its rail and port facilities to accommodate the rising trade volumes. Azerbaijan's strategic position in the Middle Corridor is gaining international attention. In July 2025, Azerbaijan and China signed a memorandum of understanding to boost transit cooperation along the Middle Corridor. This agreement includes expanding transit operations, digitalizing infrastructure, and increasing cargo flow, underscoring the corridor's growing importance in global trade networks. So Shenzhen is not just a growing city, it's shaping the future of trade and cooperation between East and West, building new connections across continents. Anastasia Lavrenia from China, especially for AnewZ.
Russian drone attacks have struck the Bucha district near Kyiv injuring civilians and damaging property. New evidence of war crimes have also emerged as Ukraine considers a possible ceasefire along current front lines. Fikrat Dolukanov has more.
Drone attacks continue to haunt communities around Kyiv. Overnight, Russian forces launched another wave of drones at the Kyiv region, hitting the Bucha district. Fires broke out and several homes were damaged. Local authorities say 3 women aged 16, 56 and 80 were injured. Bucha's mayor Anatoly Fedoruk has shown the aftermath of the attack. In the town, 7 private houses and a kindergarten were left with varying degrees of damage. Thankfully, there were no fatalities, but emergency services, police and utility workers remain on the scene, clearing debris and assisting residents. Meanwhile, disturbing new evidence has emerged from the early days of Russia's occupation of Bucha. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, has released previously unseen security camera footage from March 2022, showing Russian soldiers killing a civilian, 70-year-old Volodymyr Rubailo, and looting a local shop. The video captures the moment the man is first wounded, then killed at close range, before the soldiers search his body and ransack the store. The outlet has named the alleged perpetrator as Sergeant Vladimir Borzunov of Russia's Air Assault Regiment. While Borzunov denies his personal involvement, he does indeed admit that Russian soldiers were responsible for the killings in Bucha. On the diplomatic front, the United States has again called on both Ukraine and Russia to step up efforts to end the war. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce says President Trump remains focused on bringing the conflict to an end and is prepared to use America's economic leverage to push forward negotiations. However, Ukrainian officials remain skeptical about any potential Trump-Putin talks, concerned that Kyiv's interests may be sidelined. Finally, President Zelenskyy has admitted in comments to The Telegraph that liberating all occupied territories by military means may not be fully realistic. He says Ukraine is prepared to consider a ceasefire along the current front line, though he insists there can be no international recognition of Russia's claims to seized land, as Ukraine's constitution forbids any change to the country's territorial integrity. The situation remains tense, with the human cost of this conflict ever present for both the people living near the front line and those still seeking justice for the crimes committed in the early days of the invasion. Fikrat Dolkhanov, Elbrus Musayev, Kyiv, Ukraine, AnewZ.
Coming up after the break, we'll be discussing the war in Ukraine and the possible meeting between Trump and Putin. See you soon.
I want my city to be newest, coolest, sexiest new resort city in the world. And that's my goal. If you want to develop tourism in any country, it's going to be much easier to do it if you have casinos as part of your entertainment industry. Our casino will be the largest in Europe and 5th largest in the world.
Welcome to Green Fest Training 25.
Are you ready? for this festival?
Because it has a pure energy.
First time performing in my country, I feel amazing.
I've been coming here the last 25 years. It's just wow.
I love the city, I like the people.
I'm so happy to be here.
When I come on the stage, they will have to dance.
There's a lot of cool stuff that's been done. We're gonna have an amazing show. Welcome to Azerbaijan. Welcome to Seabreeze.
Hello, I'm Orkun Amashov. Welcome to Dialogue of Civilizations. No man is an island entire of itself. Our true connection as species go far beyond digital technology. In this exciting new series, I'll be exploring a vast and fascinating history of connections between civilizations and revealing secret bonds that have helped societies, cultures, and religions peacefully coexist. Join me and let's explore together.
Welcome back to AnewZ. Let's begin by taking a closer look at how the future of the war in Ukraine might look like and the implications of the possible meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Joining us now is Anna Evans, political analyst based in Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, James.
Now, is Putin's strategy to influence Trump to impose peace under the aggressor's rules?
I'm not quite sure if this is Putin's strategy. I would say it is also very much in the interest of President Trump to gain some time before the threatened economic sanctions are due. As you know, President Trump had given Russia 10 days to agree with the ceasefire, and the deadline falls today. And so the promise was, or the threat was, that if Russia did not comply with the deadline in agreeing with the ceasefire with Ukraine, then the United States would impose secondary sanctions on countries that are importing oil from Russia. And why is this important? It is so important because, you know, the flux of income that Russia gets from selling its oil to countries which include first place China and second place India. So this influx of revenues from oil sales is so important for Russia's economy, for Russia's war economy. In essence, it constitutes the war chest for Russia. And so if Trump imposed the secondary sanctions today as expected, it would mean that Indian firms and Chinese firms and the states, both Indian and Chinese, who are buying oil from Russia would all need to be sanctioned. But this is a really hard economic policy to implement. It is very hard for the United States to impose sanctions on countries that are as big and as important in terms of trade as both India and China are. And so it seems to me that it is also in President Trump's interest at this stage to gain time so that he can decide what to do, you know, as a next step in terms of sanctioning. So it, on the one hand, President Putin gains time with regard to Russia's position on the field, but on the other hand, President Trump also gains time with regard to his coercive diplomacy using the economic threat of sanctions.
Now, would the involvement of European leaders in the negotiations help Zelenskyy in any way?
It is really hard to say, because if President Putin and President Trump want to meet, it might be too much noise to have the European leaders present. So it is only natural that President Putin has requested to have this sole meeting with President Trump, precisely because it is President Trump that is negotiating the expected sanctions on economic assets and on the sales of oil to third countries. And so it is not required that all interested parties are present at all negotiations and during all stages. You know, it is actually, there are sequences of negotiations where at some stages it is important that there is not a lot of noise surrounding a specific sequence of negotiation, a specific step. In this case, in my analysis, it seems very clear that it is in both President Trump and President Putin's interest to negotiate on their own and to deal with the issue of tariffs and secondary sanctions on their own without European leaders being present, because European leaders are not 100% consensual among themselves. You know, it's 27 countries, they have different interests, and also they certainly are not fully consensual with President Trump's decisions. And so this is a step that probably from the point of view of President Trump and, you know, President Putin as well, requires a bilateral relationship. So I don't really think that it would really make much difference if the European leaders were present. Probably it would create a lot of complexity in the talks without much concessions coming after that.
Now, what are the chances of something concrete coming out of the meeting?
I would say that the meeting will lead to some kind of decision with regard to the tariffs and the secondary sanctions, but I would not expect a very big deal in terms of ceasefire, of a ceasefire. You know, both Russia and Ukraine are massively producing drones, you know, and Russia keeps being fairly supported by China and also by North Korea and, you know, by Iran in some aspects, and also by India in terms of the influx of oil sales from Russia to India, and same from Russia to China. So I'm not quite sure that there is a set of conditions that would allow President Trump to put that much pressure on President Putin. So going back to my initial statements, it is not easy for President Trump to actually impose these sort of massive sanctions upon countries that have so much trade with the United States, such as India and China, and, you know, without then the United States getting consequences in terms of inflation and other issues at the domestic and economics level. So this is a very delicate, fine balance, you know, between what can be achieved and the risks of what can happen. So I wouldn't expect much beyond some declarations, maybe another deadline, and some, issues with regard to concessions in terms of tariffs. Even if this
Anna,
is masked in a narrative.
Yeah, Anna, I'd like to move forward with the questions. The meeting should at least bring the two presidents closer together. Will this be counterproductive for Ukraine?
Well, James, I would say that not necessarily, because we remember that President Biden, so the former US administration, was very estranged from dialogue with Russia. And then President Trump tried at the early stages of his mandate to do a rapprochement, so to get proximate with Russia and friendlier with President Putin. It apparently didn't work as much. And then President Trump shifted the foreign policy line towards Russia by becoming more assertive and using more coercive diplomacy rather than carrots. So going to the sticks versus Russia instead of the beginning of mandate carrots. However, we don't see much happening in terms of real results from any of these strategies. So frankly, I do not think that because of a dialogue, Ukraine will be at all harmed or prejudiced. On the contrary, I think it is always good that a great power like the US is stepping in and trying to achieve some form of consensus. And whether this is going to be very effective, that unfortunately I cannot promise. It doesn't seem very likely. But it nevertheless is always a positive sign when there is dialogue. It is better to have dialogue than none.
Now, finally, Anna, so far Russia's position hasn't changed. Can we say that Putin is giving in to Trump's pressure?
I wouldn't say so. So far, all the indications that we have, all the signals that we are receiving from the narratives, the talks, everything that Steve Witkoff has said after his last day's meetings with President Putin does not indicate in any way that President Putin is willing to change his conditions for peace. And in fact, what we have seen is that both sides are keeping their respective conditions. And so we haven't reached an overlapping circle of results, which is something that we need to reach for a ceasefire or a peace process to take hold. If there is no consensus on a specific set of conditions, then there is not much chance of a peace agreement. So unfortunately, I don't think there is much change with regard to President Putin's will and determination, but the same thing in terms of the European side of the equation. And so let's see if President Trump can do anything about it. I don't hope for much, as I've mentioned previously, but let's see what happens.
Thank you very much for your time and insight, Anna.
Thank you, James.
After the break, we'll look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay tuned.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Corridors are of great value to us. Construction works are being carried out on the Azerbaijani side, both rail and road.
President Aliyev and his team are working very intensively. We are also in close cooperation.
It will shorten the time from the Central Asia to Europe.
The middle corridor doesn't end here. Here, it becomes a force.
This is not only about national defense. At the same time, the defense industry has now become a serious economic force.
Turkish states are reviving their defense establishments and making a big mark in history in the defense world.
When we look at Turkey's breakthroughs, defense industry and its strength within NATO, the merging of Turkey's power with that of the Turkic world means the emergence of an immense force.
We focus on paradigm-shifting, innovative fields.
On Thursday, President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev met with U.S. President's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Washington during his working visit to the U.S. A memorandum of cooperation was signed between Azerbaijan's state oil company SOCAR and ExxonMobil with the participation of President Aliyev and Steve Witkoff. The document was signed by Azerbaijan's Minister of Economy, Mikhail Jabarov, and Vice President of ExxonMobil, John Ardale. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that he will host the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, and the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, at the White House today for what he called a historic peace summit. In a post shared on his Truth social account, Trump said both leaders would join him for an official peace signing ceremony, marking what could be a major diplomatic breakthrough in Azerbaijan-Armenian normalization process. He wrote, "These two nations have been at war for many years, resulting in the deaths of thousands of people. Many leaders have tried to end the war with no success until now, thanks to Trump." Trump claimed that his administration has been engaged in behind-the-scenes diplomacy with both sides for quite some time, leading to the upcoming agreement. In addition to the peace deal, Trump said the United States will also sign bilateral agreements with both countries to enhance economic cooperation. Turkey and Syria have signed a landmark agreement to establish a joint business council. It aims to restore institutional ties after years of fractured relations.
Turkey and Syria have signed a landmark agreement to establish a joint business council aiming to restore institutional ties after years of fractured relations. The Memorandum of Understanding was signed on Wednesday during a roundtable in Ankara chaired by Syrian Economy and Industry Minister Nidal Al-Shar and Turkey's Deputy Trade Minister Özgür Volkan Ağar, with participation from business leaders under the Foreign Economic Relations Board. The talks focused heavily on opportunities in Syria's post-war reconstruction, with special emphasis on build, operate, transfer, and public-private partnership models that could follow Turkish firms to play a leading role in rebuilding critical infrastructure. In total, 9 additional Memorandum of Understanding agreements were signed between Turkish and Syrian civil society organizations, laying the groundwork for long-term cooperation across trade, investment, and industry. Turkey's Trade Ministry calls for the reopening of the communication channels between the private sectors and deepening economic ties in a structured, sustainable way. While diplomatic relations between Ankara and Damascus remain sensitive, this economic step marks a strategic re-engagement with the potential to grow if stability and trust can be built over time. For AnewZ, this is AnewZ, Istanbul, Turkey.
Foreign Minister of Turkey Hakan Fidan visited Syria and met with President Ahmed al-Shara and Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani on Thursday. Turkey says its priority is to seize these opportunities in line with the shared interests of both countries and in a way that supports Syria's stability and security 8 months after the fall of the Assad regime. Millions of Afghans have returned home over the past year, with numbers continuing to rise. International organizations are urging governments and donors to provide immediate support, warning that without coordinated assistance, host communities may face increasing strain. Tamim Bahis has more.
Since September 2023, more than 4 million people have made the journey back to Afghanistan. And just this year alone, 1.5 million have returned, with thousands more arriving every week. Officials warn the situation could intensify even further as another million Afghans holding registration cards in Pakistan are expected to cross back in the coming months. The IOM says the challenge is not only to provide immediate humanitarian relief, but also to ensure the towns and villages receiving these returnees have the infrastructure and services to support them. Without adequate investment, both new arrivals and existing residents could face worsening conditions. The organization is appealing to governments and donors worldwide to step in now with resources, warning that the window to prevent a deeper crisis is closing fast. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for AnewZ.
Kazakhstan has officially launched the construction of its first nuclear power plant, with Russia's Rosatom serving as the main contractor. Engineering surveys have commenced near the village of Ulekhen to determine the optimal site and develop project documentation. The project is expected to cost around 14 to 15 billion US dollars. A roadmap agreement has been signed for the construction of 2 reactor units, with the project expected to take approximately 11 years. Financing discussions are underway, including the possibility of Russian state export funding. Caspian nations are stepping up efforts to protect the Caspian Sea. At a meeting in Awaza during the UN Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries, Deputy Prime Ministers from the 5 coastal states raised concerns about ecological changes. Fariza Kalimoziner has more.
Kazakhstan has the longest stretch of Caspian coastline, almost a third of the entire shore. We are in Aktau, the regional capital of Mangostau, where the scale of the sea's retreat is hard to ignore. Huge areas that were once underwater are now completely dry. And according to the National Hydrometeorology Service, the Caspian's current water level is minus 29 meters, based on the Baltic Height system. The shallow northern part of the sea, shared by Kazakhstan and Russia, is suffering the most. A drop like this has not been seen since 1977. And in the last 15 years, the water surface in Kazakhstan's part of the Caspian has shrunk by more than 7%. Marine life is also at risk. Sturgeon numbers have plummeted by 90% over the past 40 years. The causes are complex, but scientists point to several key drivers: rising greenhouse gas emissions, higher air temperatures, and faster water loss from both the sea itself and the rivers that flow into it. This is made worse by increasing demand for water in farming, industry, and city infrastructure, which puts even more pressure on river systems. About 130 rivers flow into the Caspian, but the Volga plays the biggest role. It provides over 80% of the sea's annual inflow, around 270 to 300 billion cubic meters of water. But decades of industrial development and water infrastructure projects along the Volga may have reduced the amount of water that actually reaches the sea. Environmental experts are calling for a joint review of the Caspian's water balance and for long-term cooperation between all the countries that share this sea. Because the Volga flows through Russian territory and the Caspian is a shared basin, scientists say active international cooperation is essential, not only at a technical level, but through political dialogue as well. As concerns grow, international organizations have joined the Save the Caspian Sea movement. It was launched by Kazakh ecologist and legal expert Vadim Ni. We met him in Almaty before traveling to Aktau, and here is what he told us.
The current trend will continue, then we can lose almost 80% of habitats for Caspian seals, for sturgeon fish in this century. It's a very likely scenario for Kazakhstan, because we are planning the dredging works in the seaports and also on the Caspian Sea to enable more transportation of cargoes on the Caspian Sea. But also we are increasing the oil deposit exploitation on Kashagan. That will lead to the doubling, the tripling the pollution of the Caspian Sea, which is already very high.
Falling water levels threaten the entire region, but the experts warn that Kazakhstan could be affected the most. Some are already comparing the situation to the Aral Sea crisis, where years of environmental decline caused major damage to nature and human health. Many also question the effectiveness of the Tehran Convention, signed in the early 2000s. Most of its decisions have not been put into action. And just recently, President Tokayev brought up the Caspian issue again during a speech at the United Nations Regional Center in Almaty. It was another call from Kazakhstan to the global community, urging the world to help protect the largest enclosed body of water on the planet before the damage becomes irreversible. From Aktau, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ.
After the break, we will take a closer look at the upcoming trilateral meeting between Azerbaijan, Armenia and the US. Stay with us.
Join me, Nick Summerbeef, on AnewZ. From my days playing in the Premier League to working as a broadcaster for the channels like Al Jazeera and beIN Sports. I've never been afraid to ask the tough questions to find out what's really going on behind the scenes of the world's biggest sports teams. We'll be taking you inside the latest stories, stats and dressing room secrets of the world's biggest teams.
What is power? Has leadership truly evolved, or are the old rules of geopolitics still pulling the strings behind the scenes? Who is really powerful? And what makes people feel powerless? Our new series explores the secrets, strategies, and consequences of power.
Welcome back to AnewZ. The leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia are set to meet at the White House to sign what is called a US-brokered peace agreement hosted by President Donald Trump. Joining our discussion now is Mr. Yashar Sari, Director of Heydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies at Ibn Khaldun University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
So let's us be clear. How important is the joint declaration by the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, which is not a peace treaty, but a document leading to the eventual signing of such a final deal?
I mean, this is the, even though it's not the final peace agreement, but it will draw the framework of the peace agreement. For that reason, we can say that this is a kind of turning point of the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict, basically ending the, this issue. And the second thing is to this summit also important, not only solving and signing the framework of the peace, but also to implementing or promoting or promising to implement future cooperation. This is related Zengezur corridor, even though name of the corridor change. The third reason is important because the United States involved in this process and basically bringing these two countries' leaders together and taking the certain responsibility. Already both Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev and the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, they met several times. And the last time, last June, in United Arab Emirates, they were negotiated both sides and their team. But this time, the Americans involved this process means that that's important. The last part, which we can say, these two important actors is missing here. One is the Russia, the other is the Iran. That's these two actors have a long time very important role in the Caucasus, but this time they are not in part of this activity and the peace agreement. So the American taking the position on this issue and peace process, that's also important.
Now, what are the key elements to be agreed upon at the White House?
I mean, we can, of course, we don't have the detailed information, especially both Azerbaijan and the Armenian government side, we don't have the real information. But from the Western media and the different sources and Trump tweet on the issue, we can see that several things will talk, maybe sign in this during this peace process. The first one is both Azerbaijan and Armenia will agree on dissolving the OSCE Minsk Group. OSCE Minsk Group was established early 1990s. So-called, they supposed to play the role to finding peaceful solution on the Karabakh issue. And this group is led by the three countries' diplomats, France, United States, and Russia. This Minsk group lost its capabilities. Already they didn't play a real role, and both Armenian and Azerbaijan agreed to cease this Minsk process. The second thing is Azerbaijan long time asking the Armenia to taking some clauses from the Armenian constitutional document related this demand of the Armenia. In that part is and certain improvement will happen. Maybe they may take some part, which is they will not claim any territory from the neighboring countries, including, of course, Azerbaijan and Turkey. The third is that one is the more emphasized in media and the Trump tweet, and already this was discussed last 1 month because of the United States ambassador in Turkey, Tom Barak, mentioned this one. The American playing role to connecting the Zengezur corridor. I mean, when we are talking about American company take the responsibility, so satisfying both the Armenian government is long time saying that this is our territory, we have some sovereign right, so we don't want to share that sovereign right with the others. But giving this certain opportunity to American company to building the corridor. This is not the only corridor connecting railway or the highway, but also natural gas and the oil pipeline, fiber optic communication lines too. So that way, the American wants to take role to connecting the mainland Azerbaijan with the Nakhchivan and taking this responsibility. The last one is we already saw on the news, the United States and United States companies and Azerbaijan signed the agreement on the oil and gas exploration. So ExxonMobil and the SOCAR signed the agreement. So that way, to Americans more involving the Azerbaijan's natural resources. So that way, to making this region like the Trump called this corridor, the Trump route for international peace and prosperity trip. So that way, to Americans play the more role in that sense, creating peaceful condition in the region.
Now, Azerbaijan has long argued that without Armenia removing territorial claims against Azerbaijan, no peace will be viable. Yet it seems this will not preclude Baku from agreeing to this deal. When is the final deal expected to be sealed?
I mean, if today they sign without any delay, if they sign the framework peace agreement, then the final peace agreement will be signed very close. I mean, sure. But at least to Armenian is recognize that the Azerbaijan right in a certain point, taking out of some clause from the Armenian constitution and constitutional papers, which is they are not claiming the territory from the regional neighboring countries. That is the important point. And if they promise, I mean, of course, if the Armenian government promise and they keep that promise, then the peace agreement signed. We know that the signing the agreement is not the full, totally finishing the process, because we had this experience in 2009 when the Armenia and the Turkey signed the normalization paper. In that paper is saying that the Armenian will take out those clauses from the Armenian constitution. Yes, Armenian government signed, but the Armenian constitutional court rejected. So the Azerbaijan is, for that reason, Azerbaijan is cautious. So they want to see that not only Armenian government, but the other Armenian institution accepted taking out those clauses. Because never knows if the Armenia today, Pashinyan government is gone, then someone has come, will continue this peace process, will take this clause from the constitution and constitutional paper. That's need to be clarified. And the framework of the peace agreement supposed to sign today in Washington, D.C., if the special clause say that whatever signed here cannot change in the future. That way to securing the process to complete in that sense.
Now, how will the planned transit corridor operate, and what benefits or challenges could it bring to the region?
I mean, the first thing is let's not forget this corridor. If this corridor realized, the two countries will upset. One is Russia, the other is Iran. These are the very powerful neighboring countries. This second issue is to already, if they, the one reason why the Armenia is cautious about the signing this corridor, saying that this is my territory, so I don't want to lose the sovereignty over that territory. But keeping the Armenian sovereignty, but giving the responsibility to American company, not the American soldiers or the military forces, security forces. In that sense, first securing the Armenian condition. The second is the finding financial sources to building this line. That way, both Armenia and Azerbaijan will benefit. Another country will benefit is the Turkey. So that way, Turkey can connect not only Azerbaijan mainland, but also the Turkic world in Central Asia too. Those countries will benefit also. We can say that China and the European countries. China, in that sense, the Chinese Belt and Road initiatives middle corridor pass through Caucasus region. So that way, the shortest way, because right now is the road and the pipeline, everything passing from Azerbaijan through Georgia to over 200 kilometers more road and the pipeline building. But making the Zengezur corridor, the pipelines, road, railway, highway, and the fiber optics communication will connect the east to west, west to east. European Union will benefit. They have already a global gateway project, and that way they will have the more shortest way to connect.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and insight, Mr. Yashar. Thank you.
Not at all.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to AnewZ.